Fellow Redditors, what was a moment where you thought a person you knew might be an actual psychopath? In my university days, I lived with a guy whose girlfriend used to come over to our apartment and hang out fairly often. She was always friendly and a superb baker who frequently brought cakes over to our place, so she was always welcome and we became a fairly close group of friends. Towards the end of our final semester, the guy came home one day and told us he needed to talk about something, and promptly told us that she had confessed to him that she had stabbed her roommate's cat in a fit of anger for failing a class, and then hurriedly buried the corpse in a nearby field. We told him to report her and dump her immediately, which he refused to do, believing that she just needed someone to support her. Still to this day I can't believe someone as pleasant as she was could have done something so horrific. This guy turned to me, no emotion in sight, and said, "What's wrong with hurting people? Never left a party that fast, but I was frightened as heck." We care for our 2 nephews due to their parents' alcohol use and some other issues. We moved our family 3 hours away so they could stay in familiar town. We already have 3 of our own, 2 of whom have autism. The younger one's dad takes offense to us doing his job, I guess. He says we are trying to steal their kids because ours are retarded. Threatened to kidnap our kids so we know how it feels. Then said he was going to hair frick our youngest daughter, 4 at time last year, and scramble her brain until she's as retarded as her siblings. We started out trying to have decent relationships with him and mom, but they get angry we won't allow them to lie or make unrealistic promises to the boys. The little one wet bed after every phone call or contact visit. All calls and visits we insisted be supervised by us to prevent the lies and promises. Oh, and because dad was encouraging his son to attack our son because he has autism and needs to man up, they started going nuts with the threats because we refused to let it be a free-for-all. No, you can't show up unannounced. No, you can't talk before school because it upsets the kids and they need to concentrate on school day. It sounds horrible and I'm not proud to feel this way, but I am starting to hope they just die or go to prison. Boys would be better off without the constant drama and in and out. They won't call for months then call 25x in a few hours because they want to talk now. Mum has 6 deuce, 2 of those boys in car. Still free, still not labeled habitual offender. Courts have been pushing back her last 3 deuce, including the 2 with the boys, for 2 years. COVID isn't helping, but every time she goes to court for 2 years now, she asks to extend and they do. So she's still drinking, driving without license. They've not paid 1 cent towards boys in 2 years either, which is separate issue from visiting concerns. I hate these freaking people, but I love my nephews too much not to help them. Just wanted to thank you for loving those kids and providing them a stable home. When my best friend asked me to find a cat and kill it with her in her backyard, we broke contact after that. Heard from a mutual friend it was actually confirmed by her therapist that she was an actual sociopath a few months later. We broke contact after that. You dodged a catastrophe. Watched her beat up her sister's sick dog while waiting in the vet's office. Was also when I knew the relationship was doomed. I was hanging out with my ex last summer when she started talking about how she wanted to kill someone and explained in detail how she wanted to cut someone's throat with a knife. Needless to say, I didn't get much sleep that night. I dated a cop for about a month and a half. He was super controlling and obsessive. We went on a trip where he met my best friend and he was super pee the whole time. I think it was because we spent a lot of time with my friend and we didn't have alone time. Anyways, we drove back and during the whole drive he was asking, "You're not going to break up with me, right?" He was driving my car and I was kind of scared tbh. He was trying to talk about my past and would get mad because he would ask questions and I would answer, like if I wasn't allowed to have dated anyone before him. We get to his house because he needed to be dropped off and I could go back home. But he told me to get out of the car and he came face to face with me and told me that I better not break up with him. I remember him saying a few other things that made me feel super unsafe. I just said no and then left. I got home and texted him telling him it was over. I was living with my parents at the time, but I have a feeling if I lived alone, he would have showed up at my house. He blew up my phone to the point that I couldn't be on it. He was non-stop texting and calling till the morning. He called me every name under the sun and tried to make me feel like crap. but I was just shocked that someone would stoop as low as he did. You should report him to his supervisors. Texts are proof. Middle school. Dude used to put his cat in a raccoon cage and dunk it in the pool, set fires, mostly spoke in Beavis voice, threw a cinder block through my parents' car window, spray painted swastikas on cars in our neighborhood. My parents said I couldn't hang out with him, so when he came to my house, I told him he had to leave. He said, "It's not like I'm gonna rape your mom and kill your dad." My dad overheard and kicked him out. Next time I walked by his house he chased me with a hammer. Last I checked he was in jail. Jesus Christ. I wish kids like this would try this in the hood. They would not survive. Wouldn't say psychopath but definitely sick in the head. She was about 5 years older than me, maybe 3, and she would make me do simple things at first like dance. But then she started to tell me to do things that I thought was normal because I was young and didn't have many friends, like take off my clothes and dance. Soon it escalated to her telling me that she was in control of me and if I didn't do what her sick fantasies wanted she would hit me. I soon told on her and never saw her again. Years later I had the talk with my mum and it hit me like a truck. If I were to see her now I would beat the crap out of her and tell her to say sorry. She also pushed my head underwater when I wanted to stay above water at the pool had her mother didn't do crap. And that is why the talk has to happen ASAP. Even little kids can learn about good versus bad touches and what to do about them. Well, a girl I just went out with told me when she was little she used to target and run over dogs with her power wheels. We didn't work out, but that and some other statements made me think she was fairly close to psychopath. In the pool at Girl Scout camp, I playfully splashed another camper and she went ballistic. Her friend stopped her before she got to me. Later the same camper was planning an after-hours fashion show in their cabin. My cabin was going to go, but someone let it slip to a counselor so we stayed in. Turns out it was a naked fashion show and she was sent home. There were other instances of her insanity, but I've blocked them from my memory. What I do remember is having a candle ceremony by the lake where we talked about what happened and the counselors did an excellent job counseling us. I dated a guy. Turned out he had a fiance and 8 other girlfriends. I had snooped on him hard and found no evidence. No little trip ups. No indications this was what was going on. I had stayed with him, met his friends, etc. I was shocked when his fiance called me because she found a picture of me on his phone. It was so calculated and perfect that only a sociopath could pull it off. He had no remorse when I confronted him. I went through something similar. It's weird how easily their friends can cover it up. They never said a word. When I started hearing his voice in each of her opinions, when I noticed that the baby would flinch out of the way when I went to hug them, seeing his smirk when he had caused pain, hearing that he had told the kids that the argument they had heard didn't happen. Holy frick, I just felt so much emotion from this paragraph. I worked with a girl I knew vaguely from high school. She seemed to be generally well liked and popular, but when she opened her mouth the weirdest comments would pop up. For example, "Did you see the cute tiny frogs out in the back? They make the craziest noise when you squish a bunch at the same time," or "There are baby ducks trapped in the pool. They can't get out, it's hilarious." I really couldn't tell if it was for shock value or if she had no idea that it's wrong to kill animals. Her absolute favorite pastime was going to parties just to get them busted. I imagine they were her friends getting in trouble a lot of the time too. When my ex tried to kill himself in front of me, when he waved a gun in my face, don't know if it was loaded, when he threatened to slit my throat because he wanted to see the blood pour out. What a garbage human being. I don't even know if I'd call him human. It was a long time ago. If you find yourself in a situation like this, you are being abused. Get out as quickly and safely as you possibly can. Hey everyone, make sure to stop and swing by our eye bleach, RAWW, or a similar sub full of joy and humor of your choice. This thread is an intriguing read, but also a disturbing one. One of my best friends is a fully diagnosed confirmed non-violent psychopath. I've been close friends with him since high school, about 8 years ago. He's also Russian if that makes any difference. He's a good looking dude, like model type. I remember when he transferred to my school during sophomore year I thought he was the coolest dude ever. So did everyone else. Not just the students, the teachers loved him. He was the smoothest dude I've ever met. He's also the most fascinating person I've ever hung out with. I have never seen someone care less about others' opinions or his own well-being. I've seen him get pee drunk and talk to cops underage. I've seen him do multiple gainers off 60-foot cliffs. I've seen him drive motorcycles over 150 miles per hour. He works in sales and does extremely well. He never tells me how much, but I know it's well over 6 figures a year. He can get along with anyone. If I had to go to a place I didn't want to go to or didn't want to interact with people, I'd bring him because he's so smooth. He can talk you into and out of anything. He can make you stay up till 3 AM drinking on a weeknight when you have work the next day. He's not a bad dude. He's just completely emotionless, and I kind of like that about him. You can say whatever you want to him and you know he won't get upset. I learned he was a psychopath about a year and a half ago, and since then, I have watched his behavior every time we hang out. It's so fascinating how much he just doesn't even comprehend other people's opinions. He's not rude or offensive. He just completely disregards what people say. I know everything he says and does is to pander to who he's with, cause I've caught him off guard a few times. But he's extremely good at being your best friend within 5 minutes of meeting you. He's still one of my best friends, and every time I hang out with him it's an adventure. He's dating one of my friends and I know he'd never hurt a fly. But if he did, I know he'd feel nothing. There was a guy like that at my husband's parents' church. Successful businessman, married with kids and always polite and nice but distant. It seemed like at one point he decided to make being a good person his goal and set about ticking those boxes. Eater. I only knew because when he joined he discussed his diagnosis with the church leadership, which my father-in-law was a part of. I had a friend that treated me like her boyfriend, always asking where and with whom I go. Many times cries that I don't spend time with her but with others. One day I just say that's enough and end that toxic friendship. After all this, she went to our friend Mary and tell her that she needs her phone to text me. Mary was always nice and friendly, so when she asked me why I am so angry about that friend, I tell her true. Then phone rang, and when I answered it was my toxic friend with giggles. It was me all along. You ruined our friendship. Why? I was always so good to you. I forgive you that you were talking behind my back about me. Our friendship is so great. I know you will never end it. 2 days later she pretend to be another friend. She tells all of our friends that she don't understand why I am so rough. Tell lies about me. Blackmail me. Come to my house pretending nothing happened. When I was tired of all that things, I just said to her that I had a boyfriend and he didn't like her, so I would never speak to her again. It was stupid, but it worked. After a year or two she texted me saying that she changed and she missed me. I said never again, and that was it. I used to have a neighbor girl who would threaten to kill the litter of kittens a stray cat had under her porch just had if I didn't stay and play with her longer than I wanted to. He was the kindest and funniest kid I knew. 5 years later I found out he stabbed a boy in broad daylight and killed him. Sounds like my first husband. The kind and funny was an elaborate act he put on to manipulate people. It was extremely convincing, but inside he was empty. Just empty. When you see into someone's true soul and there's nothing there, it's like seeing into the void. It's horrific. I think I always kind of knew but tricked myself into believing otherwise. In 3rd grade a kid would always hurt himself others, and he would always slam kids' fingers in their desks. When the school got news of this they expelled him and he switched schools. Knew a guy in high school. He was a senior when I was a freshman. During early football practice, before contact practice with full pads, he was knocking the crap out of tiny freshmen with the lineman blocking pads. Had wild eyes, untrustworthy eyes, having way too much fun. Same kid was in my cousin's fitness gym class and he threw a whole exercise bike at a kid and beat him up because that kid had talked to his girlfriend. This kid later robbed a local cafe. He had pantyhose over his head, was carrying a butcher knife, and took the whole goddamn cash register. I'm a therapist. I can't give you any details, but I have had a few clients who committed very violent attacks or murders with no remorse. Until we do the therapy to get them through the fricked up childhood trauma they went through, then the remorse is there and real. If we can get them that far, the outcome is always that The folks that I've worked that develop the ability to dissociate to the extent they were able to do those acts have lived a life of early childhood horror that goes above and beyond what you see in even the most disturbing movies. This makes me so sad, and it's hard to come to terms with because I want to be angry at bad people and have no sympathy for them, but they're fragile, too. That's hard to recognize. When my now ex held a pair of scissors to my throat 2 days after getting our own place when I asked him to take the trash out after I had worked a 10-hour overnight shift and he wasn't working. A kid I went to school with. We were all sitting in the bleachers at school before classes started and I overheard him and another kid talking about me. He said, "Man, I sometimes just want to cut her tea off so I can just put M in front of me and look at M." That kid grew up to kill the American sniper. During uni I dated a much older guy who was hellbent on me moving to his hometown and being his housewife once I graduated. Towards my final year in uni I realized this wasn't what I wanted and tried to break it off numerous times. In hindsight it's clear he was a bit of a psychopath because I rejected his initial request to date and he just kept showing up whenever I was so charming and sweet to my parents, would emotionally abuse me and tell me I would never find a job upon graduation, etc. The final straw was when he flipped out at me for wearing a mid-thigh length dress during a holiday in Singapore, locked away my passport and beat me senseless with his briefcase. It's a pretty traumatizing memory and I've blocked out most of it. I played dumb, said I was wrong and waited for him to sleep before finding my passport and literally fleeing with my purse. I've never been so grateful for a 24-hour airport because I remember breaking down into tears after passing immigration and just sobbing. I've never bothered to look back or see what he is doing, but he spent the next month calling me and my parents trying to spin that I was being overdramatic and had gone crazy. Judging from the definition of what a psychopath is, I had a classmate that seemed friendly and charismatic, always hung out with the popular kids and everyone loved him. And with my naivety I wanted to befriend him because he seemed super cool. But as our friendship moved along, he kept trying to push weird boundaries like sexual crap. He was very manipulative towards me. Somehow I was dumb enough to send him explicit photos. He later showed me nudes of other girls and criticized how they looked in front of me. I was worried about if he had shared my nudes with our friends. He had jokingly said he did to get a rise out of me. I was so freaking pee. And that is when my parents found out and barred him from coming over and we couldn't remain friends. However, my rebellious butt kept texting him because with his charm was able to convince me to unblock him. He would send lewd text messages and I felt super conflicted about whether I should say something. And I just got tired of it and he turns around and starts quoting Bible verses about the sins of lust and crap like I was the lewd one and he was more righteous than me for throwing scripture in my face after calling him out. And then I went on a mission to warn any girl that came in contact with him. But literally no one believed me. Anytime we were in the same friend group, he would just flip a switch and go back to being a gregarious dude. He never showed any hint of that weird crappy behavior when others were around, so I basically had no proof other than my personal anecdotes. How could a charming, God-fearing guy be such a scoundrel? Right. IDK what his behavior is like now because I blocked him on literally everything he could contact me on. Yes, the hardest part, sadly, is that no one believes you. I admire you for wanting to warn the other people. Had a friend in middle school. Things started out harmless enough, lighting sneakers and bike tires on fire, throwing crap at cars, you know, general mischief stuff. Then he put his cat in the microwave once for 15 seconds. It never meowed again after that. Kid was really fricked up. His mother was a drug addict and a prostitute. I had no idea because I was like 11 or 12 at the time. I have no idea what happened to him. Honestly, I don't give a frick either. A guy I briefly dated in college would snap at me for the littlest things and make me cry. Then when I broke up with him, he was crying for me to get back with him. In the midst of him sobbing, he told me that the reason why he liked gory horror movies was because he could see himself doing that type of stuff to people. I was like, yeah, that's not going to make me want to get back with you. I was a teacher many years ago. I taught 2nd and 3rd grade. One of my 3rd graders was almost certainly a psychopath. One day in class we were discussing religion. This was a British curriculum where we studied personal, religious, and social education. He was a Christian and his father was a pastor or something like that. He started screaming in the face of one of my second graders about God. The fury in his face and his physicality in that moment were terrifying. I was afraid he was going to attack her. After this incident, the kid started telling me stories about how he was killing and cutting up cats after school and even reported that he had been beating on a child of a person who worked for his parents. He left halfway through the year and the attitude change among my students was palpable. They asked to open the windows and we rearranged the whole classroom. I don't think they were aware of this, but it was pretty obvious that they wanted to clear his lingering nastiness out of our classroom. My kids were much more normal and happy after he left. I'm confident that kid grew up and hurt people. I would not be surprised to hear that he murdered someone. I'll say you drugged me with all those prescription pills I stole from you, got me drunk and raped me. It's like, whoa, first of all that's pretty extreme when I ask you to leave to being too drunk, cousin. Thanks for stealing the pills I told you I needed, BTW. Secondly, like holy crap, you're gonna just burn a family to the ground with those kinda accusations? How is that the plan in your head? Where did that come from? EWW. Then the next day she just tried to pretend it never happened, calling me up seeing if I wanna hang out. I didn't. I think she's spread some rumors since then. A couple of people have made a couple of comments too on the nose. Luckily they know her better than I do, even so her word doesn't carry much credibility. An ex-friend of mine told me that if I ever left her, she'd slip poison in my food when I wasn't looking. Her dad was a chemist I think, so she said she could steal some from him. She had previous incidents where she lost her crap. For example, when she gave a girl a concussion because she asked for a pencil. So I didn't eat at school for a long time after she said that. When he very easily said things that were outlandish and obviously lies. He was tall and charming and handsome and everyone believed him. BC, he was such a nice guy. You could see anger flash across his face and it would be immediately replaced with a look of sincerity. Well, I've heard from 3 people that he and his little brother sexually assaulted his cousins in high school and the grandma is trying to keep it hush hush because his cousin came out and told the family 3 years later. Now he's going to graduate from a police academy. An ex-partner is most certainly a psychopath. He has many of the markers: unstable childhood and adulthood criminality, impulsivity, pathological lying, glib charm, grandiosity, inability to accept responsibility. The list goes on. I am generally a pretty savvy judge of character because I'm a social worker and have been in contact with all personality types, but he had me completely fooled for a short period of time. He's a parasite whose disregard for other people, including his own children, which thankfully are not mine, knows absolutely no bounds. But the ease with which he can lie is so unsettling, and when I discovered nearly everything he said was bathed in untruth, I hightailed it out. Thought she was December 2015. I'm traveling for business. No ex-wife lowers the windows down on my Jeep and instructs my kids not to tell me. A heavy rainstorm comes through the area. I return home and not only is my Jeep soaked, mold is growing on the seats and headrest. I ask her why she didn't roll the windows up and she said, a real man would know to ask if the windows were up or down on his car during a rainstorm. Knew she was. February 2017, right before the divorce. I come home from work and she's angry that something wasn't in the mail. She corners me and starts screaming. I pull out my phone and record her screeching. She hits me in the face and ribs. I don't respond. I learned she has an attorney for a planned divorce and found out she wanted to have me charged with battery because she hurt her fist on my jaw and ribs punching me. And a man should never hurt a woman. Chaser. She apologized the next morning, but you had it coming because the bank statement wasn't in the mail, and you know that makes me angry. Jesus, I'm sorry you went through that, dude. Congrats on the divorce. From ages 11-15 she had made elaborate stories based on other people's traumas so people would feel bad for her. TW, miscarried 4 times, saw her baby on the bed after she miscarried at 10 weeks, made rape allegations on 2 innocent people, one wasn't a minor and one was autistic, she made me believe I'd made her kill herself, for no reason. I texted her mum in a panic thinking she was dead. Turns out she was sat in the living room just watching Netflix. engaged to a uni student, one of the guys who she was in love with, and she accused of rape, went to a strip club with her, her dad threw her into her room and locked the door saying he'd slit her wrists open. Her door doesn't have a lock so I saw right through that one. Her dad's a raging alcoholic and beats her. She made an elaborate story about how she was caught with a boy in bed by his girlfriend. The boy was in Greece LMFAO. Strip danced on a table at school. Faked an eating disorder. She murdered her uncle who tried to rape her. It was freaking scary when she said this. She was bawling her eyes out but turned out to be false OFC. There is so much more. You could literally suggest anything and I bet I could think of a linked scenario. She also would take my phone and do crap like message people about her fantasies about me while on my phone, and she would post photos online with both of us in it and she would come out as gay so everybody thought we were together. And she posted to Pornhub, even though she was a freaking minor. It got taken down, thank frick, and publicly shared that she was into some inappropriate crap. When I cut her off she kept a photo album full of pictures of me and I had people messaging me telling me I'm the only thing she ever spoke about. Not sure if this makes her a psychopath but she's definitely got some issues and problems with lying. It's been a few years so she's now out of my life but she definitely fricked me up as I grew up. Yikes. And I really hope if her behaviors were caused by childhood trauma that she gets help healing from it, but I can't exactly speculate on that. My badminton partner and good friend after 3 years admittedly follows people home in his car for fun. I found this terrifying. I was becoming acutely aware of the controlling behavior and the gaslighting. Then he said he could turn his emotions on and off, like a switch. Now we're mid-divorce. Had a friend in junior high who was a military brat and a bit of a freak. The first time hanging out he convinced naive young me to drink a cap full of hot sauce. Erring on the side of caution I dipped the tip of my baby finger in and touched it to my tongue. It was the ultra concentrated Dave's hot sauce meant to season an entire pot of chili with a few drops. But that wasn't the moment. One night we were hanging out at his house without his parents, drinking Jolt Cola and doing junior high things, and he ending up chasing us around the house with a knife and also with an arrow, while laughing maniacally. Oh, also years later when he came back to town to visit I picked him up in my car and he put his hands over my eyes while I was driving down the highway. He had a girlfriend who was younger than him. She was completely devoted to him. It was a bit unsettling. One day they break up and she almost commits suicide. Her friends had to go to her house. They had to call the hospital. She didn't get hurt, but still. And he told me all this very casually, laughing. He found it funny. At first I thought that maybe he didn't know how to react. This was a coping mechanism. But it's been years since then and he still laughs when he says that, like if it was a funny anecdote. I've told people that he's a sociopath but no one seems to care. This was in middle school for me. I was on the dance team and it was after school, so I was walking over to a group of my friends to stretch for practice. I didn't realize that I'd left out my shoes, flip-flops or sandals, whichever way you want to call them. So as we were stretching, a girl that was a grade above me and my classmates came up behind me and began lightly smacking my back, sides, and head with one of the shoes. At first I ignored it because this specific girl was not at her full mental capacity. To put it lightly, I guess. I'm not sure how to word it properly and I apologize for using wrong terminology. Anyways, she started hitting me harder with the shoe sandal so red marks were appearing on me. I had already asked her to stop and my voice was raising to get her to stop. All the while my friends were trying to get her to stop while another girl, an upperclassman from the high school's dance team, ran to get the coach teacher. Finally, the teacher appeared out of thin air and got the girl to stop smacking me. The girl called me a loser and ran off. The teachers that were present while all this was happening moved my dance team shirt and saw the large red marks all over my back, neck and parts of my face. Things finally got back to normal and my friends and I continued stretching. After 15 minutes of stretching, the girl circled around us and literally attacked me from behind by grabbing my shirt, throwing me down to the ground of the gym, and hit my back open-handed, leaving even more marks. She eventually got kicked from the team for attacking a minor. She was 16 or somewhere close to that age. Months later during the school day at lunch, I was with my group of friends when we were approached by some other kids telling me that the girl, I'll call her JJ, was trying to find me and stab me with a broken pencil that had the lead protruding from it. Two friends went to get the principal while myself and the rest of my group went to the teachers that were supervising us. I told the teachers what was happening and they didn't believe me until JJ came up with the pencil in hand. She even told the teachers she wanted to stab me. The teachers sent me and my friends inside to talk to the principal. Thankfully the principal knew what JJ had done prior and called JJ's mom and my mom. Well, JJ's mom got to school first and began yelling and berating me, calling me a liar, SLT, and other expletives that a child should never hear. The principal threw her out of the office and waited until my mom got to school and explained what happened. Am I wrong to still be terrified by those memories? This is the second time I've ever shared this memory story. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.